I request all the volunteers and the audience to kindly settle down. We are starting with the last day. Kindly settle down. Karmanyavadhikaras karmani, which means one should keep on performing their actions, their karma, yet do not have the intention of being entitled to the fruits of their action. This implies that our heart and intention should be pure while we are performing any action, because we might be entitled to the rewards, but the expectation of the rewards is not the right thing while performing the actions. Namaste and a very good morning to the dignitaries on the dais and the audience. Today is the concluding day of the second edition of our esteemed guest lecture series, Swatantryaveer Savarkar, Smruti, Abhinav, Bharat, Vyaspeeth. We have had a debate, a discussion and a lecture series full of profound knowledge and which has given us a food for thought. The vision for this guest lecture series was sowed few years back when we had in mind, and the venture was laid down by the Center for Legal Excellence by our professor Dr. Anagha Baldota ma'am. The vision was to give quality enhancement in every facet, to polish, nurture and hone the skills of the students. Then be it right from selection of different topics or the foundation of various clubs. The guest lecture series and the second edition I would title is one such successful venture for the same. Excellence is a big journey. It is filled with lots of struggles, yet it requires determination. A true leader is the one who translates the vision into reality. After the successful 3 days, I would say that the vision has turned into the reality. Today, when we speak of the theme, that is Indianization of law, the topics were well versed. We had it right from Kautilya's Arthashastra to proving Bharatiyata in the constitution along with reference to jurisprudence, along with the topic of Purva Mimamsa in hermeneutics. Today again, we'll be speaking on one such topic by our esteemed guest speaker. Before that, I would want to welcome our principal, Dr. Priya Chopre ma'am, to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. So, I am very happy to welcome you all to this magnificent conclusion of grand 4 days lecture series in the fond memory of our great revolutionist of the nation, Swatantryaveer Savarkar, an alumnus of Deccan Education Society, Fergusson College. We are now gathered for the rightful conclusion of this marvelous event, namely second edition of Swatantryaveer Savarkar Smruti Abhinav Bharat Vyaspeeth lecture series. On behalf of DES Shri.Navalmal Firodia Law College, I welcome you all to the last session and valedictory function of the second edition of Swatantryaveer Savarkar Smruti Abhinav Bharat Vyaspeeth lecture series. For this valedictory function, we have with us as chief guest Advocate Bhagwan Rao Salunke sir. We are privileged to receive you here, sir. I warmly welcome you, sir. I further welcome Dr. Sharad Kunte, Chairman, Deccan Education Society, to this valedictory function and the last session of the lecture series. Sir is a constant support to all of us in every one of our ventures. I would specially mention the valuable guidance extended by Shri Mahesh Athavale, Vice Chairman, Deccan Education Society, in execution of this lecture series. Further, I thank Advocate Ashok Palande, Chairman, College Development Committee of D.A. Shri.Navalmal Firodia Law College, for his support and unconditional support and guidance. I further extend a warm welcome to all the members of governing body and council for their support and encouragement in the endeavor that we undertook. I welcome the guest speaker for today's session, Asst.Prof. Sonali Renuse madam, who will enlighten us on the theme of lecture series from developmental perspectives since past to present. Welcome, ma'am. I am also grateful to all the esteemed guest speakers of this lecture series who shared their wisdom with the audience and profoundly contributed in the success of our venture. I welcome all the faculty members and my dear students who had rightfully grabbed this opportunity to enrich themselves with the intellectual discourse that we had over these 4 days. With a great pride, I would like to mention here that last year, on the occasion of 75th anniversary of Indian independence, we had inaugurated the first edition of Swatantryaveer Savarkar Smruti Abhinav Bharat Vyaspeeth lecture series at the hands of Honorable then Governor of West Bengal, Shri Jagdeepji Dhankad sir, who is now holding the esteemed constitutional post of Vice President today. This year, on 19 September 2022, we inaugurated the second edition of Swatantryaveer Savarkar Smruti Abhinav Bharat Vyaspeeth lecture series at the hands of Dr. Radhakrishnan Pillai sir, who also addressed the audience as the first guest speaker. This year, the theme of lecture series was Indianization of Law. Organization of this lecture series is one of the initiatives of DS Center for Legal Excellence. Through this lecture series, we endeavored to have not only intellectual deliberations but also to come up with some pragmatic modalities necessary for socio-legal reforms. Accordingly, we intend to ignite the young minds for having a rightful thought process in different legal arenas and to encourage them to take practical experience of working in such areas. I am happy to mention that the second edition of this lecture series, after the conclusion of today's lecture, will become a great success, and we could succeed in channelizing the minds of audience through the contributions of esteemed guest speakers of this lecture series. With this note, I would like to congratulate Dr. Anagha Baldota Madam, Honorary Director of DSCLE, and co-coordinators of this venture, Assistant Professor Kaveri Dev and Assistant Professor Madhura Apte, for their constant efforts in organization of this 4 days lecture series and making this event a grand success. Further, I sincerely thank a team of students volunteers who have taken painstaking efforts to execute every detail in organization of this lecture series with great perfection. They rightly deserve a great round of applause. Once again, I welcome you all to the last session and the valedictory function of this lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really an encouraging discourse. Now I would like to call upon Vasudha to introduce us with today's guest.
Good morning, one and all present here. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's guest of honor, Advocate Bhagwan Rao Sarunkhe sir. He is the chairman of Yashwantrao Chavan Law College, College Development Committee. He is the member of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa and the Privilege Committee. He is also the chairman of Managing Committee, All India Shri Shivaji Memorial Society, Pune. He is the joint secretary of Akhil Bharatiya Maratha Shikshan Parishad, joint secretary of Deccan Maratha Education Association, and he is practicing notary under the Indian government. I now request Dr. Sharat Kunte sir to felicitate Advocate Sarunkhe sir. I would now like to introduce our resource person for the day, Assistant Professor Sonali Renuse ma'am. She has completed her BSL LLB from Shivaji University, Kolhapur, and Masters from Department of Law, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. She has a teaching experience of 16 years in various law colleges like ILS, Marathwada Mitra Mandals, Shankar Rao Chavan Law College, Pune, and New Law College, Bharati Vidyapeeth. She has keen interest in subjects like legal history, jurisprudence, constitutional law, and international law. I now request CDC Chairman Advocate Ashok Palande sir to please felicitate Sonali ma'am.
I'll call upon Dr. Sharat Kunte sir to kindly come over here and deliver the welcome address.
चेंज एवढ्याकरता केलेला आहे की जेवणामध्ये बाकी सगळे छान पदार्थ असले ते स्वीट डिश मुद्दाम शेवटी ठेवतात. हां, की ती चव बरोबर घेऊन जावी तशी जेवते आणि मग बाकी काय तिखट बिखट असेल ते सगळं आधी होऊन गेलेलं चालतं. एवढ्यासाठी मुद्दाम बदल केलेला आहे. वेलकम ऑल ऑफ यू. डेक्कन एज्युकेशन सोसायटीज लॉ कॉलेज is famous not only in Pune but across India. Students are not only trained as lawyers but also as good citizens. We don't produce only speakers but we produce leaders who will guide the society in the right way with the vision of social welfare. To achieve this, our law college plans various activities throughout the year. One of the most important activities is Swatantryaveer Savarkar lecture series. The topic of today's lecture is Indianization of law, which means that the law should be uphold the tradition and historical heritage in Indian culture. The experts in law should think about it and appropriate changes should be presented before the actual lawmakers. But Indianization is not enough just to comply with the law. There is a need for Indianization in all walks of life. In our day-to-day life, we use Colgate in early morning and good night in the late night. Throughout the day, we are using several commodities which are not made in India. Of course, our country has to import all these commodities. The money paid for it goes abroad, and the more we import various goods, the more our indigenous industries suffer. Greater the import, corresponding indigenous industries become weaker and weaker. Taking pride in the indigenous goods in our daily life is the Indianization of our economy. And that is the real need of an hour. We should be proud of our mother tongue. But unfortunately, we cannot speak and write smoothly and clearly in our mother tongue. Even after 75 years of independence, we are enslaved of English. It means that we need to Indianize ourselves in the use of language. We need to understand the meaning of our festivals and customs and celebrate them according to the Indian tradition and manner. Unfortunately, we try to follow the Western customs and traditions. Increasingly, we go away from our Indian customs or Indian culture. Actually, the increasing attraction of the Western culture is dragging us away from Indianization. This means that we need to become Indian culturally also. In order for our country to be self-respecting, strong and prosperous, we need to Indianize every person and organization in our country. We lawyers have the ability to give a deep thought on the concept of Indianization properly and find out the relevant changes in our lifestyle accordingly. One more suggestion I will like to give. Very good or we can say quality of personalities are coming here and giving their lectures, sharing their knowledge with us. So why not to convert all that knowledge in the form of a book? If we publish a book every year related to all these lectures conducted in this particular course, it will be a very good practice, I think. Please think of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really inspiring. Next, I would want to call upon Sayonke sir to kindly address the audience.
Chairman of Deccan Maratha Education Society, Dr. Sharat Kunte sir, Chairman of CDC Committee, Advocate Ashok Palande sir, Principal Chopre ma'am, and resource person Sonali Renuse ma'am, all dignitaries and students. Today is a very important function in this society, and I am very much thankful that you have called me. As I observed, and when the speech of our Kunte sir was there, everybody was so serious. So we must be, what he told us, that we should be proud of our mother tongue. So allow me to speak in my thoughts in Marathi. मित्रांनो, खरं तर ह्या संस्थेबद्दलचा आदर हा आपल्या सर्वांच्याच मनामध्ये, किंबहुना या शहरामध्ये, राज्यामध्ये, देशामध्ये अतिशय मोठ्या प्रमाणात आपल्या प्रत्येकाच्या मनामध्ये आहे. या संस्थेची मॅनेजमेंट, कुंटे सर असो, पलांडे सर असो, संपूर्ण एंटायर मॅनेजमेंट अतिशय डिवोटेड आहे. ही संस्था, ह्या संस्थेमध्ये काम करायला मिळणं आणि ह्या संस्थेमध्ये शिक्षण घेणं हे अत्यंत एक भाग्याचं या ठिकाणी समजलं जातं. हे का आपण हे असं का म्हणतो हे सुद्धा आपण लॉजिकली समजून घेतलं पाहिजे. ही एकमेव संस्था ही ह्या शहरामध्ये आहे, ह्या राज्यामध्ये आहे. ह्या संस्थेचं नाव इथल्या अनेक विद्यार्थ्यांनी या ठिकाणी, या राज्यामध्ये, या देशामध्ये, या जगामध्ये केलं. त्यातलंच एक नाव आहे स्वातंत्र्यवीर सावरकर. जे सावरकर या ठिकाणी मी पाहिलं, आपल्या सर्वांना या ठिकाणी अतिशय प्रेरणा घ्यावं असं एक महान व्यक्तिमत्व कोणतं असेल तर ते वीर स्वातंत्र्यवीर सावरकर आहेत. जे आपल्या नाशिकसारख्या एका ठिकाणी भोगूर अशा एका लहानशा गावामध्ये ज्यांचा 1883 मध्ये जन्म झाला आणि त्यानंतर अतिशय सर्वसामान्य कुटुंबामध्ये 2 भाऊ 1 बहीण असा हा परिवार. त्यांच्या लहान वयामध्ये आई वडील गेले. आई वडील गेल्यानंतर या ठिकाणी ती फॅमिली खचते. अशा परिस्थितीमध्ये या ठिकाणी मी शिक्षण घेतलं पाहिजे ही भावना, काही मुलं ही जन्मजात ही फार मोठी असतात, ते आपल्याला कळत नाही. त्यांचा मोठा भाऊ गणेश यांनी त्यांचा सांभाळ केला आणि मॅट्रिक झाल्यानंतर 1901 मध्ये हे सावरकर आपल्या फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजमध्ये या ठिकाणी आले. फार मोठी अभिमानाची, आनंदाची गोष्ट की ह्या कॉलेजच्या त्या वास्तूमध्ये त्यांचा पदस्पर्श झाला. ते ह्या वास्तूमध्ये होते, ह्या वास्तूमध्ये ते शिकले. या वास्तूमधून त्यांनी क्रांतिकारी विचार अंगीकारले. त्या सगळ्या क्रांतिकाराचा बेस कुठं असेल तर ते फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजमध्ये आहे. हे सांगायला मला या ठिकाणी खूप मोठा अभिमान वाटतो. काय सावरकरांनी केलं? सावरकरांनी या ठिकाणी 1901 नंतर 1905 पर्यंत या ठिकाणी या फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजमध्ये होते. अशी बारकाईने, हे पुणे शहर असं शहर आहे, इथं जर तुम्ही काही कमी नाही, फक्त तुमची इच्छाशक्ती, विल पॉवर मोठी पाहिजे. कुंटे सरांसारखे, पलांडे सरांसारखे फार या ठिकाणी चांगली लोक हे तुम्हाला सहकार्य करायला तयार आहेत. असे फक्त तुमची इच्छाशक्ती पाहिजे. सर मला हे करायचं आहे, तुम्ही मला सपोर्ट करा. अशा दृष्टिकोनातून या पुणे शहरासारख्या ठिकाणी हे फर्ग्युसन कॉलेज आहे, ज्यांनी आता फार मोठी व्यक्तिमत्व घडवली. आणि मग सावरकरांनी हे पाहिलं की इथून मला या ठिकाणी जे शिक्षण मिळतं तर त्या शिक्षणाच्या माध्यमातून या ठिकाणी मला हे खूप पुढे गेलं पाहिजे. कुणासाठी पुढे गेलं पाहिजे? मला माझ्या देशासाठी पुढे गेलं पाहिजे, मला माझ्या समाजासाठी पुढे गेलं पाहिजे, मला ह्या गोरगरीब लोकांसाठी पुढे गेलं पाहिजे. मग त्यासाठी मला काय केलं पाहिजे? मला आनंद वाटतो आपण लॉ कॉलेजचे विद्यार्थी आहात. मी जवळजवळ या ठिकाणी 20-25 वर्ष 30 वर्ष या फील्डमध्ये आहे. अतिशय बारकाईने मी लॉ कॉलेजच्या स्टुडंटचा, वकिलांचा, जजेस, ज्युडिशरीज बारकाईने मी अभ्यास केला. असे मग ह्या ठिकाणी BA झाल्यानंतर सावरकरांनी ठरवलं की समाजाचे खरे प्रश्न सोडवायचे असतील, समाज खरा समजून घ्यायचा असेल, समाजामध्ये खरं नेतृत्व करायचं असेल तर तो करू शकतो. हा लॉचं एज्युकेशन त्याला मस्ट आहे. आणि वकील हा माणूस ते समाजाचे प्रश्न न्याय्य मार्गाने सोडवू शकतो. म्हणून मग त्यांनी या ठिकाणी इंग्लंडला गेले, लंडनला गेले आणि तिथून त्यांनी त्या लॉची पदवी बॅरिस्टर तिथून झाली. आता सावरकर या ठिकाणी त्या काळामध्ये 1905-06च्या दरम्यान ते तिथं गेले आणि 1910 पर्यंत किंवा 9 पर्यंत तिथं राहिले. त्या काळामध्ये तिथं बॅरिस्टर होणं हे फार मोठं काम होतं. आता सावरकरांना जर त्यांनी मनात आणलं असतं माझ्यासाठी जगायचं, सर म्हणतात तसं मला गाडी पाहिजे, बंगला पाहिजे, सगळं पाहिजे, असं जगू शकले असते. बॅरिस्टर माणसाला त्यावेळेला लाखो रुपये मिळत होते. हे लाखो रुपयाचा त्यांनी त्याग केला. मला माझ्या फॅमिलीसाठी नाही जगायचं, मला माझ्या देशासाठी जगायचं, मला माझ्या राष्ट्रासाठी जगायचं. आणि ह्या माध्यमातून सावरकरांनी ते स्पिरिट, देशभक्तीचं स्पिरिट हे मनामध्ये संपूर्ण ते आणलं, शरीरामध्ये भिनवलं, रक्तामध्ये भिनवलं की नाही, मला या ठिकाणी माझ्यासाठी जगायचं नाही, मला समाजासाठी जगायचं, या देशासाठी जगायची, देशाची सेवा करायची, या राष्ट्राची सेवा करायची. आणि मग त्या दृष्टिकोनातून ती कशी होणार हे त्यांच्यापुढे प्रश्न होता. ब्रिटिशांची फार मोठी राजवट, फार मोठी गुलामगिरीतून आपण चाललो होतो. अतिशय मोठं या ठिकाणी फार मोठे पिळवणूक होत होती. त्यांनाही सुचत नव्हतं काय करायचं, आपण कशा पद्धतीने करायचं. त्यांनी त्यावेळेला एक युथचा मेला म्हणजे ग्रुप एक निर्माण केला. आणि मग त्यांनी त्यावेळेला मग या ठिकाणी पाहतो 1857च्या स्वातंत्र्य संग्रामावर त्यांनी जे पुस्तक पब्लिश केलं आणि त्याच्यातून जे क्रांतिकारक विचार मांडले, त्या क्रांतिकारक विचार पाहून भगतसिंग असो, सुखदेव असो, राजगुरू असो, ह्या सर्वांनी ते पाहिलं. एवढंच नाही तर नेताजी सुभाषचंद्र बोस यांनी या ठिकाणी ते पाहिल्यानंतर त्यांना वाटलं की हे शेवटी हे सावरकर कोण आहेत, त्यांना आपण भेटलं पाहिजे. म्हणजे बघा, फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजमध्ये शिकणारा एक विद्यार्थी, त्यांना भेटण्यासाठी हे सगळे क्रांतिकारक जमा झाले आणि म्हणले तुम्ही एकटे समजू नका, आम्ही तुमच्याबरोबर आहोत. या देशाला जर स्वातंत्र्य द्यायचं असेल तर आम्ही तुमच्याबरोबर आहोत, आपण पाहिजे ते या ठिकाणी करू, परंतु या ठिकाणी देशाला आपण स्वातंत्र्य करू, ह्या ब्रिटिशांच्या राजवटीतून आपण या ठिकाणी आपल्या देशाला मुक्त करू. पण एवढं म्हणणं सोपं नव्हतं. काय करायचं, 4 लोक जरी चांगल्या विचाराने एकत्र आले तर या ठिकाणी चांगली सेवा घडू शकते, पण 10 वाईट लोक जर आले तर खूप या ठिकाणी प्रॉब्लेम येतो. म्हणून लोक पॉझिटिव्ह थिंकिंगची लोक पाहिजेत. ते सगळे क्रांतिकारी लोक एकत्र आले आणि मग त्याच्यामध्ये त्यांनी एक मुवमेंट ह्या ठिकाणी चालू केल्या. चालू करताना या ठिकाणी त्या इंग्लंडमध्ये या सावरकरांना कर्जन नावाचे एक या ठिकाणी ब्रिटिश अधिकारी खूप त्रास द्यायचा. आणि मग त्याचे त्रास दिल्यानंतर मग या ठिकाणी त्यांनी सुद्धा त्या मदन कुमार डिंगराच्या हस्ते त्यांची हत्या झाली आणि त्या आरोपामध्ये सावरकरांना अरेस्ट झाली. आता ब्रिटिशांचं राज्य, कायदे त्यांचे, अधिकार त्यांचे, सगळे त्यांचे. आणि मग 1910-1911च्या दरम्यान सावरकरांना 25 वर्ष, 50 वर्षाची शिक्षा काळ्या पाण्याची झाली. आता ही जी शिक्षा आहे ना, जी अत्यंत डेंजर असते, अत्यंत वाईट अशी. काळा पाणी ह्याच्यामध्ये सगळ्यांना माहिती, काळा पाणी, काळा बाजार, हे सगळं तुम्हाला माहिती. अतिशय वाईट शिक्षा की काही नाही, ह्यांना कुठंतरी या ठिकाणी कुठल्या परिस्थिती ह्यांना ह्या मुवमेंटपासून या ठिकाणी मागे घ्यायचं. त्यांना अशी एक शिक्षा, भयानक शिक्षा होती. आणि ती शिक्षा त्यांनी अंदमान या ठिकाणी शेलूर जेलमध्ये या ठिकाणी त्यांना ठेवलं. सावरकर खूप अस्वस्थ होते. मी या ठिकाणी जर माझं आयुष्य ह्या जेलमध्ये घालवलं तर आपल्याला स्वातंत्र्य मिळणार नाही. माझं या ठिकाणी जर या ठिकाणी मला ध्येय प्राप्त करायचं असेल तर मला कुठल्या परिस्थितीमध्ये काहीतरी केलं पाहिजे. मग जेलमध्ये सुद्धा त्यांनी 6000 देशभक्तीवर काव्य, 6000 त्याचं लिखाण केलं त्यांनी. आता एवढं मोठं काम ते भिंतीवरती लिहायचे आणि जर वेळ प्रसंगी मिळेल नाही तर कोळशाने वगैरे असं त्याने ते केलं. आणि त्याच्यानंतर ती इतकी होती, त्याच्यावर आपण म्हणतो स्वतंत्र जयस्तुते. आणि त्यानंतर त्यांना हे गेल्यानंतर त्याच्यातून त्यांनी सुद्धा सागरा प्राण तळमळला. म्हणजे हे ज्या गोष्टी वाचल्यानंतर माणसाला वाटतं की काय विचाराची हे हा महामानव होता, हे आपल्याला लक्षात येतं ना असं. आणि त्यांना इतकं बेचैन झालं की मी काय करायचं. मग त्यावेळी पद्धत होती की जो कुठलाही या ठिकाणी ब्रिटिश अधिकारी जेव्हा तिथे यायचे, व्हाईसरॉय वगैरे, तर त्यांना वर्षातून एकदा या ठिकाणी मर्सी पिटिशन त्यांच्याकडे काढता यायचं. आणि त्या दृष्टिकोनातून त्यांनी या ठिकाणी मर्सी पिटिशन त्यावेळी ते तिथं दिलं. आणि 10 वर्षाच्या जेलनंतर 1921 त्यांची या ठिकाणी त्या जेलमधून सुटका झाली. परंतु काही कंडिशन त्याच्यामध्ये टाकल्या की तुम्ही कुठल्या राजकीय मुवमेंटमध्ये भाग घ्यायचा नाही, कुठलं राजकीय काम करायचं नाही, ब्रिटिश विरोध काम करायचं नाही, परंतु ह्यांना बाहेर पडायचं होतं. ते आपल्याला या ठिकाणी आपल्या देशाच्या स्वातंत्र्यासाठी बाहेर पडायचं होतं. त्यांनी सोशलमध्ये गेले, त्यांना या ठिकाणी अस्पृश्यता निर्मूलनाचं काम फार मोठं केलं. मी या ठिकाणी माझ्या वाचनात आलं की एका चांभाराच्या घरी ते गेले, म्हणजे जेव्हा त्या प्लेगची साथ आली आणि काही दिवस ते रत्नागिरीच्या बाहेर गेले, रत्नागिरीत परत आले, तेव्हा त्यांची 1 महिन्याची मुदत राहिली होती. तर विष्णुमंत दामले त्यांच्या घरी ते राहिले. विष्णुमंत दामले त्यांना काय म्हणाले की माझं ही लहान गोडाऊनची जागा आहे, तुम्ही याच्यात राहता का? एवढा मोठा माणूस जो बॅरिस्टर इंग्लंडमध्ये झालेला, तो इतक्या लहान ह्याच्या ठेवला. त्यांच्या मनाला राज वाटली विष्णुमंत दामलेंना की कसं काय आपण यांना इथं ठेवू असे. मग या ठिकाणी त्यांना दाखवलं तर सावरकर जे बोलले ते फार महत्त्वाचं आहे. सावरकर म्हणले अरे बाबा, मी त्या अंदमानच्या काळ्या कोठडीत राहत होतो, त्याच्यापेक्षा ही खोली बरी नाही का? मग ते दामलेंनी सुद्धा ते मग इतकं त्यांच्या मनाचा मोठेपणा होता, तेव्हा माणूस सुद्धा मोठ्या बंगल्यात राहू शकला असता, पण त्या ठिकाणी विष्णुपंत दामलेंच्या घरामध्ये तो राहिला. हे फार मोठे मनाने मोठे लोक होते. आणि तिथं त्यांनी राहिल्यानंतर मग विष्णुपंत दामलेंना घेऊन ते बऱ्याच ठिकाणी जायचे. चांभाराच्या घरी गेले, सत्यनारायणच्या पूजेला. त्यांना हा जातीवाद मान्य नव्हता. तिथं गेले पण हे प्रसाद खायला तयार नाहीत. मग त्यांनी ते प्रसाद खायला लावला. त्या चांभाराच्या ह्याला त्यांना सांगितलं की तू महाराज त्या लोकांना बोलवलं का? ते म्हणजे नाही बोलवलं. मग ते आले तरच मी पूजेला येणार. मग ही जी आहे ना, सावरकर हे फार मोठे होते. त्यांना हा जातीवाद मान्य नव्हता. सामाजिक ऐक्य पाहिजे हे त्यांना मान्य होता. हिंदू हा हिंदू पाहिजे हे त्यांचं म्हणणं होतं. तो हिंदुत्व मानणारा पाहिजे ही जी भावना ही त्यांच्या मनामध्ये होती. इव्हन ते काही ठिकाणी जर पाहिलं तर जे माणूस हिंदुत्वाचा विचार करणारे मुस्लिमांना ते जवळ करायचे, हे सुद्धा त्यांच्या चरित्रामध्ये आहे. ह्या ज्या गोष्टी आपण समजून घेतल्या पाहिजेत. आपण काय करतो की ते कुठलाही इतिहास, कुठली व्यक्ती समजून न घेता जी टीका करतो ती सगळ्यात वाईट आहे. तुम्ही माणसाला समजून घ्या की जो माणूस इतक्या मोठ्या उंचीवर पोहोचलेला माणूस समाजासाठी या ठिकाणी बाहेर पडतो, देशासाठी बाहेर पडतो, आणि तो माणूस या ठिकाणी सामाजिक ऐक्याच्या भावनेतून काम करतो. असं भागे काय जरूर आपण म्हणतो काही ठिकाणी त्यांच्यावर टीका झाली, पण ती टीका ही काही वेळा गैरसमजातून असते. माणसाचा या ठिकाणी काही वेळा अभ्यास न केल्यामुळे ते असते. आणि त्याच्या दृष्टिकोनातून या ठिकाणी सावरकरांना अनेक अडचणींना तोंड द्यावं लागलं, अनेक या ठिकाणी समस्यांना तोंड द्यावं लागलं, अनेक वाईट प्रवृत्तींना तोंड द्यावं लागलं, पण त्यांनी कधी डिमोरलाइज झाले नाही, कधी खचले नाहीत. ते सातत्याने पुढे राहिले. म्हणून या ठिकाणी आपल्याला कधी खचणं, नाउमेद होणं हे बरोबर नाही. आपण चांगलं ध्येय असेल तर आपल्याला या ठिकाणी यश हे 100% येतं. आणि त्या दृष्टिकोनातून आपण सावरकरांच्या या ठिकाणी खरंच आपण हे व्याख्यान मला त्यांच्या नावाने केलेलं आहे. हे आपलं भाग्य आहे. संस्था हे दरवर्षी ते करते. पण हा विचार हा एका आठवड्यापुरता नसतो, एका महिन्यापुरता नसतो. हा सातत्याने तुमच्या डोक्यामध्ये, तुमच्या अंतःकरणामध्ये, तुमच्या बुद्धीमध्ये असला पाहिजे. की जर या ठिकाणी सावरकरांनी काय सांगितलंय, मला सावरकरांनी एकच सांगितलंय की मी या संस्थेतून बाहेर पडतो तर मी समाजासाठी बाहेर पडेल, देशासाठी बाहेर पडेल, आणि मी माझ्या हातून काहीतरी काम करेन. हा विचार हा सातत्याने आपण केला पाहिजे. परंतु या ठिकाणी मी या ठिकाणी लॉ कॉलेजचे बऱ्याच मी जवळ 100 लॉ कॉलेजला मी भेटी दिल्या आणि मी पाहिलं वकिलांचा अभ्यास केला. लॉ कॉलेजचा हे क्षेत्र हे सर्वात चांगलं आहे. फर्ग्युसन कॉलेजच्या त्या ह्याच्यातून या ठिकाणी अनेक या ठिकाणी मला वाटतं व्ही पी सिंग, नरसिंहराव, इंदिरा गांधी ह्या सगळ्यांचा संबंध ह्या वास्तूशी आलेला आहे. आपले विद्यार्थी होते, हे आपले विद्यार्थी होते ज्यांनी या देशाचं नाव जगात केलं. म्हणजे हे कॉलेज किती महान आहे. इथं या ठिकाणी तुम्ही शिकता. मग या ठिकाणी तिकडे आले, पण तुमच्या लॉ कॉलेजचा पण मुलगा असा सरांनी पुढे म्हणला पाहिजे त्यांनी जगात आपलं या कॉलेजचं नाव केलं आणि तुम्ही 100% कराल हे मला या ठिकाणी मला खात्री आहे. तुमच्यात ती क्षमता आहे, तुमच्यात ती क्षमता आहे, तुमच्यात ती बुद्धिमत्ता आहे. असं आहे, तुम्ही ते करू शकता. असं फक्त काय आहे, तुमचं कॉन्फिडन्स हा नीट पाहिजे, तुमचा विल पॉवर ही नीट पाहिजे, तुमचा निर्धार पक्का पाहिजे. आणि तर एका विचाराने तुम्ही जर घेतला तर ही भूमी हा तुम्हाला या ठिकाणी ही वास्तू तुम्हाला न्याय दिल्याशिवाय राहणार नाही. पण तुम्ही जर काय केलं नाही तर कसं काय होणार? तुम्ही जर या ठिकाणी स्वतः प्रयत्न नाही केले तर ते शक्य होणार नाही. आणि लॉ कॉलेजचा विद्यार्थी हा नक्कीच तेवढा प्रबल असतो, तेवढा मॅच्युअर असतो, त्याच्या अंगी तेवढे गट्स असतात. जे सावरकरांनी सिद्ध केलं ते तुम्ही सिद्ध करायचं आहे आणि त्यासाठी तुम्ही कटिबद्ध राहणं हे अत्यंत गरजेचं आहे. ते स्वप्न कुंटे सरांचं आहे, ते स्वप्न या ठिकाणी पलंडे सरांचं आहे की तुम्ही विद्यार्थ्यांना आम्ही सगळी मदत करतो, तुम्हाला सगळं हे करून देतो, तुम्ही या ठिकाणी पुढे जा, तुम्हाला काय पाहिजे ती मदत आपण देऊ. परंतु या कॉलेजचं हे नाव जे इतर महामानवांनी केले ते नाव पुढच्या काळात तुमच्यावर ते डिपेंड आहे. आणि त्याप्रमाणे तुम्ही या ठिकाणी आता मी पाहतो वकिलांचं पुढचे कॉर्पोरेटमध्ये जातं, पण प्रत्येकजण काय करतो, वकील ह्याच्यामध्ये आता अलीकडच्या वकील किंवा पुढची पिढी, मी सरांशी बोललो, ही पिढी काय झाली की ती फोकस फॅमिलीकडे होत चाललेली आहे. ते काय करत, नवरा बायकून माझी मुलं, ह्याच्या पलीकडे कुठं जायलाच तयार नाहीत. मग असं जर झालं, आई वडिलांच्याकडे लक्ष देणार, गुरुजनांचा आदर करणार, हे संस्कार जे आहेत ना ते या ठिकाणी आपल्याला कुठंतरी त्याच्यामध्ये नीट होणं, शिक्षक तर शिक्षकाच्या परीने संस्कार करण्याचा प्रयत्न करतात, पण संस्कार हे मनातून झाले पाहिजेत. की मी या ठिकाणी माझ्या आईवडिलांना जेव्हा मानतो, माझ्या गुरुजनांना मानतो, तेव्हाच मी मोठा असतो. असे नाही तर तुम्ही मर्सिडीज गाडीमध्ये फिरा, तुमचे आईवडील जर तुमच्या बरोबर नसतील तर तुमची किंमत झिरो आहे. तुमची किंमत झिरो आहे. जो माणूस आपल्या आईवडिलांना गुरुजनांना मानतो तो सगळ्यात श्रेष्ठ. असं हे काहीतरी संस्कार हे प्रत्येक ह्यांनी माणसाने ठेवलं पाहिजे. आणि मग तुम्ही तुमच्यासाठी, कारण मी सरांना म्हणलो नेशन फर्स्ट आणि मी लास्ट, ते होतं उलटं, मी फर्स्ट नेशन लास्ट, आणि जमलं तर नेशन लास्ट. हे असं हे काय बरोबर नाही, जमलं तर नाही. असं राष्ट्र हे प्रथम असलंच पाहिजे. ती शिकवण ही आपली आहे आणि ती शिकवण आपण ही पाळली पाहिजे. असे जो राष्ट्राला किंमत देतो तो माणूस नक्कीच पुढे जातो. तुमचं माइंड ब्रॉड होतं ना, तेवढं माइंड ब्रॉड होतं. तुम्ही जर मी फर्स्ट म्हटलं की संपलं, मी आहे तिथं सगळं संपलं. म्हणजे एक रामाचं मी परवा उदाहरण पाहिलं की ते रावण को किसने मारा, तर तो म्हणजे रावण को मैने नाही मारा, मैने मारा. म्हणजे त्याच्या अहममुळे तो रावण गेला. म्हणून युद्धान होता पण तो अहममुळे गेला. त्याच्यामुळं नेहमी मोठं व्हायचं, पण जमिनीवर राहायचं. मोठं व्हायचं, डाऊन टू अर्थ राहायचं. तोच माणूस खरा मोठा आहे. अनेक आपण सावरकरांपासून पाहिले की हे सर्वजण अतिशय साधी राहणी, उच्च विचारसरणी, आणि तुमच्या बोलण्यामध्ये काहीतरी स्पार्क पाहिजे, त्याच्यामध्ये आत्मीयता पाहिजे, त्याच्यात तळमळ पाहिजे, काय ते बोलायची स्पष्ट भूमिका पाहिजे, अडखळत नाही पाहिजे, प्रेझेंटेशन नीट पाहिजे. आता तुम्ही वकील होणार काय कोर्टामध्ये? आज देशामध्ये 23 लाख वकील आहेत, राज्यामध्ये जवळजवळ 2.5-3 लाख वकील आहेत, ह्या बालमध्ये 15 ते 17 हजार वकील आहेत. एवढे प्रचंड संख्येने, आणि विशेषतः महिला आणि तरुण वर्ग कोणते सर ह्या वकिलीमध्ये येतोय, चांगली गोष्ट आहे. परंतु हाताच्या बोटावर या ठिकाणी मोजणारे वकीलच या ठिकाणी यशस्वी होतात. आता मी मॅडमला पण म्हणलो की आम्ही पण काय होतं की 3 वर्षाचा कोर्स संपेपर्यंत, 5 वर्षाचा कोर्स संपेपर्यंत लोकांना कळत नाही वकील काय आहे. कोर्टात गेला तर इतका भांबवल्यासारखा असतो, अरे बापरे कोणाकडे सिनियर शोधणं, 3 वर्ष त्याला कळत नाही की कोर्टामध्ये आपण अपील कसं व्हायचं, ऑर्डर कशी घ्यायची. आणि त्या 3 वर्षाच्या काळामध्ये तो कर्ज काढतो. ग्रामीण भागातला वकील हा लोनमध्ये मोटरसायकल घेतो, ऑफिस घेतो, आणि कुठंतरी ॲक्सिडेंटमध्ये तो जातो. मग तो त्याच्यामध्ये तो प्रॉब्लेम होतो. म्हणून या ठिकाणी तुम्हाला वकिली करताना 3 वर्षामध्ये तुम्ही कोर्टात गेला की या ठिकाणी तुम्हाला ऑर्डर घेता आला पाहिजे. म्हणून या ठिकाणी मी एक ॲडव्होकेट ट्रेनिंग कोर्स हा एक डिझाईन केला होता. त्याचे काही क्लासेस घेतले. आम्ही बार काउन्सिलतर्फेच तसं करतोय आता की तुम्हाला ह्या ठिकाणी प्रॅक्टिकल ट्रेनिंग मूट कोर्टसारखं या ठिकाणी अगोदरच द्यायचं की जेव्हा कोर्टात जाईल तर त्यावेळेला तुम्हाला ती ऑर्डर घेता आला पाहिजे. नाही तर लोक ती ठरलेली बिलचीच कामं करतात, कर्जाची कामं करतात, तारखाच घेतात, आणि अप टू डेट कोर्ट बीड अगदी जोरात चालतात. हे असं जे होता, तुमचं आहे ना पर्सेंटेज आहे ना तुमच्या बुद्धीमध्ये पाहिजे, तुमचं प्रेझेंटेशन महत्त्वाचं पाहिजे, अभ्यास महत्त्वाचा, दावा नीट करणं, नोटीस तयार करणं, ह्या गोष्टी ह्या तुम्हाला नीट क्रॉस नीट घेता येणं, हे इम्प्रेशन हो. एकेकाळी आमच्या अगोदरच्या दरम्यान बाबा भिडे वगैरे असायचे का, असे वकिली करायचे ना, धोतर असायचं, परंतु त्या जजला असं वाटायचं की काय वकील आहेत हे. मग असं नाव आपलं नको का व्हायला, आपण कशात कमी आहोत? एवढ्या मोठ्या शिक्षण संस्थेत तुम्ही या ठिकाणी शिक्षण घेताय, काय तुमच्यामध्ये कमी आहे? मग तुम्ही या ठिकाणी काय केलं पाहिजे, एक चांगला अभ्यास. हे गरिबी काय कुठं आड येत नाही, सगळ्यात माणसाचं जास्त गरिबी काय आडत ना, तुमचं या ठिकाणी तुमचे प्रयत्न महत्त्वाचे आहेत. म्हणून या ठिकाणी कोर्टात गेलं ना की इम्प्रेशन म्हणजे प्रेझेंटेशन नीट पाहिजे, ते कसलं तरी नंतर टोटल जे आपलं युनिफॉर्म तो नीट पाहिजे, व्यवस्थित कोर्टापुढे ॲप्री झालं पाहिजे, कोर्टाला पण वाटलं पाहिजे की नक्की जज कोण आहे. असं अशा पद्धतीने उभं राहावं. पूर्ण आपला अभ्यास आहे, व्यवस्थित मुद्दे मांडावेत. असं बघ सारखंच खाली बघ वरती बघ चष्मा काढा, हे असे ते ते काय नाही, थोडंसं डिसिप्लिन ही पाळली पाहिजे. आणि मग मन लावून तुम्ही वकिली केली की मग त्याच्यामध्ये तुम्हाला यश हे येतं. पहिल्या दिवसापासून मनामध्ये हे पाहिजे की मी क्लायंटशी कधी प्रतारणा करणार नाही, मी प्रोफेशनल इथिक्स पाळेल, मी माझ्या पक्षकाराला न्याय देईल, आणि मी ह्या दाव्यामध्ये यशस्वी होईल. ह्या ज्या गोष्टी आहेत ना आपल्या मनात नीट असतील तर आपलं यश येतं. आपणच मनात निगेटिव्ह असं मला कोर्टात जज काय मला म्हणेल मी नवीनच आहे, असं काही त्याच्यामध्ये नसतं. आणि बघा ना आता प्रत्येकजण काय म्हणतात केसमध्ये आम्हाला उज्ज्वल निकम द्या, तुम्हाला काय द्या म्हणणार नाही, कारण तुमचा अभ्यास तेवढा नाही ना. असं तुमचं सुद्धा नाव घेतलं पाहिजे. तुमचं सुद्धा आम्ही ज्या संसदेमध्ये जातो तेव्हा पाहतो कपिल सिब्बल, अरुण जेटली, अभिषेक मनु सिंघवी ही लोक संसदेमध्ये बोलायला सुरुवात करतात ना, बरेच लोक या ठिकाणी अतिशय स्तब्ध असतात, अतिशय शांत असतात, टू दी पॉईंट मुद्द्याने अतिशय चांगले बोलतात असे. मग आपले ना आपण कशात कमी आहोत असं आपण करू शकतो ना असे. फक्त आपल्याला तसा अभ्यास पाहिजे, आपण मनावर तसं घेतलं पाहिजे, मग तुम्ही यशस्वी झाल्याशिवाय राहणार नाही. एवढ्या मोठ्या वकिलांमध्ये तुम्हाला यशस्वी व्हायचं. आणि एकदा लक्षात घ्या, आपण आपलं क्षेत्र निवडले, हे क्षेत्र निवडलं तर त्याच्यामध्ये मी यशस्वी होणारच आणि त्याच्यामध्ये अनेक लोकांमध्ये माझं नाव घेतलं जाईल हे आपल्या मनामध्ये धारणा केलं पाहिजे. माझं काय तर वेगळं व्यक्तिमत्व पाहिजे असं. जसं व्यक्तिमत्व हे बाकी लोक अथॉरिटीज आहे तसं तुमचं पण व्यक्तिमत्व हे नीट पाहिजे आणि तुम्ही त्या पद्धतीने काम हे केलं तर यशस्वी झाल्याशिवाय राहणार नाही. असे बऱ्याच आता महिला वर्गही मोठ्या प्रमाणात जवळजवळ 40-50 हजार आता महिला वकील हे राज्यामध्ये आहेत असे. तर आणि आम्ही त्या बार कौन्सिलला महिलांना उभा करतो, महिलाच निवडून येत नाहीत, महिलांना मतदान करत नाहीत. म्हणजे हे जे आहे ना, महिलाही खूप आहेत. त्यानंतर तुमच्या युवक हा मोठ्या प्रमाणात आहे. परंतु ह्या लोकांनी ना की थोडंसं महिलांनी सुद्धा सिन्सिअर असतात, सहनशील असतात. मग ह्या महिलांनी सुद्धा या ठिकाणी आपला ठसा असा त्याच्यामध्ये की रंजना देसाई होत्या, अशा बऱ्याच आपल्या महिला की त्यांनी जे जस्टिस म्हणून चांगलं काम केलं, लॉर्डशिप म्हणून त्यांचं काम हे फार मोठं होतं. तुम्ही सुद्धा काम करू शकता ना असं आहे. तर त्या दृष्टिकोनात तुम्ही सुद्धा या ठिकाणी चांगल्या प्रकारचं काम करा. हे पुणे शहर हे असं एकमेव शहर आहे की इथं सगळ्या प्रकारचं तुम्हाला या ठिकाणी पोटेन्शियल आहे, सगळ्या प्रकारचं सहकार्य मिळू शकतं. आता ह्याच्यामध्ये मी पाहिलं की तुमचं माइंड ब्रॉड आहे पाहिजे. आता माझा मुलगा सुद्धा ह्याच कॉलेजला लॉ कॉलेजला होता, 23व्या वर्षी तो IAS झाला असं आहे. लाईफ हे खडतर आहे, परंतु त्याच्यामुळे काय डिमोरलाइज व्हायचं नाही. आपलं बी प्लॅन आहे तयार ठेवायचा. स्पर्धा परीक्षेला सुद्धा आपण हॅपी व्हायचं असं आहे. आणि त्या दृष्टिकोनातून जर आपलं लक निघालं तर तिकडं पण आपण जाऊ शकतो ना असं बघा. अशा गोष्टीनं तुम्ही जर केलं ना, फक्त एकच गोष्ट करायची, आपण कधी लाईफमध्ये डिमोरलाइज व्हायचं नाही. कधी झालं तर मेडिटेशन करायचं, योगा करायचं. जसं सावरकरांची पंचसूत्री होती ते की म्हणजे प्रदेशी मालाची होळी करणं, व्यायामाचे प्रकार करणं, ह्या सगळ्या ज्या गोष्टी आहेत तसं आपण थोडं मेडिटेशन करायचं. ज्याच्यावर आपलं श्रद्धा आहे तिथं आपण हे करायचं, पण कधी या ठिकाणी चुकीचा विचार नाही करायचा. एकच लक्षात घ्यायचं, इथं आलोय ती मी नेतृत्व घडवण्यासाठी आलोय असे. मला लोकांवर रुबाब नाही करायचा, लोकांची सेवा करायची हे मनात ठेवा. असं रुबाब करणारा माणूस कधी यशस्वी होत नाही. जो माणूस सेवा करतो तो नेतृत्व चांगलं करू शकतो. म्हणून तुम्ही सेवेच्या माध्यमातून राहा. समाज हा आहे ना तुम्हाला, आणि अनेक लोक हे शून्यातून त्यांनी नेतृत्व घडवले असं बघे. त्याच्यामुळे कुठली तुम्हाला अडचण येत नाही. ह्या पुणे शहरासारख्या ठिकाणी चांगल्या माणसाला कष्टातून जे पुढे गेले त्यांनी जगात नाव मिळवले असे. सावरकरांची परिस्थिती तशी होती, अतिशय साधे होते असे, पण त्यांचं जे लिखाण, त्यांचं जे काव्य, त्यांचे जे विचारवंत म्हणा, क्रांतिकारक म्हणा, स्वातंत्र्यसैनिक म्हणा, ते प्रत्येक गोष्ट या ठिकाणी त्यांची वाचनीय आहे. मी तर तुम्हाला जरूर अपील करेल की तुम्ही त्यांचे निर्णय पुस्तकं, त्यांचे काव्य हे नीट वाचा आणि ते विचार आत्मसात करा. त्यांनी या ठिकाणी कुठल्या परिस्थितीमध्ये कुठल्याही विचाराचं हे नाही केलं, परंतु प्रत्येक पॉझिटिव्ह विचार हा लोकांच्या जडणघडणीसाठी महत्त्वाचा विचार ठेवला, जो देश उभारणीमध्ये या ठिकाणी महत्त्वाचा ठरला. आणि त्यांनी नेहमी संगत ही चांगल्या लोकांशी ठेवा, कमी असू द्या परंतु चांगल्या लोकांची करा. एक लाख घडायला वेळ लागतो, बिघडायला वेळ लागत नाही असे. त्यामुळे चांगल्या लोकांची या ठिकाणी संगत ठेवा असं. आणि त्या माध्यमातून सातत्याने पुढे जायचा विचार करा. कुठला विचार चुकला तर डिमोरलाइज होऊ नका, त्याच्यावर दुरुस्ती करा आणि मग आपण पुढे जा. पण कधी या ठिकाणी आपण एकटे आहोत, आपलं कोणी बरोबर नाही असं काही न करता या ठिकाणी चांगल्या प्रकारचं काम करा, उत्तम व्यक्तिमत्व डेव्हलप करा. या कॉलेजला, ह्या संस्थेला तुमचा कायम अभिमान वाटेल अशा प्रकारचं काम करा अशी अपेक्षा करतो आणि माझं मनोगत संपवतो. जय हिंद, जय महाराज.
Thank you so much, sir. It was yet a motivating discourse, and we truly assure you that through inspection, self-retrospection and dedication, we will make this institute and the society proud like Veer Savarkar had did. And we know that we have a strong backing force with us as always. And about the nation as well, as Savarkar has also rightly said, that देहापासनं देवाकडे जाताना देशमध्ये येतो. So we assure you that we'll also take care that we make our country proud as well. Now we move on to the much awaited lecture series, and the topic being Indianization of law, past, present and future. Past, present and future, because today is the tomorrow that we talked about yesterday. So with this, I would want to call upon Sonali Renuse ma'am to come here and start with the lecture.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, of the dais, and my dear students. Today I stand here to address you all on a very important topic, and the topic is Indianization of law, past, present, and future. Now, as we all know that this is a very broad and a vast subject, and that is why we have to systematically divide it into parts. Because once we divide it systematically into parts, it will be possible to do justice to each and every topic. So, 1, I'm going to talk about what Indianization is. 2, I am going to talk about the pre-British era. 2nd, I'm going to talk about during the British Empire, what ideology was adopted by the Britishers to rule us. 3, then I'm talking about that in future, what exactly Indianization would mean. Okay, so the broader ambit taking into account, I've divided it into parts. Now, before I move to the topic Indianization, let me tell you there were 3 events that actually fascinated me, that I should center my speech around these things. Okay, so these 3 events are, as we all we all know, you students read a lot. So one thing is that some months ago, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, he addressed the Oxford Union, and when he addressed the Oxford Union, he talked about a concept that how Great Britain owes an apology to the colonies it ruled. Okay, so when I read that, that motivated me that I should take that into account, because he rightly pinpoints that what the Britishers have actually done to us. Because there are many people who do think that the British Raj was actually a good one, and India would not have progressed so much if they were not there. So that speech, it strikes off this misnomer that many of us have in our mind, that Britishers were a boon to us. The second episode is where recently, few months ago, where the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramanna, he said कि looking at the Indian setup, there is a need that we Indianize it. So that is the second part that motivated me that I should look at this topic from this perspective as well. And the third episode that has happened very recently, as we all know, Queen Elizabeth II, she is no more, right? So she is the one who had held a glorious era of almost 7 decades. And when this was happening, all her last rituals were done, we find that in the UK news channel a debate comes or surfaces. And in that debate it is said that we need to rethink about the imperialism, that we need to bring back the British Empire, where they have talked about that look at what has happened to India and Pakistan. We have left them, but see the kind of condition it is there. So it is time that British Empire be brought back. So these are the 3 events that I thought that I should center my address on these 3 areas. Okay. So coming back to the 3 categorizations that I made. 1, I am going to talk about the pre-British era. So I'll focus on that directly. We all know about the modern human beings, and we all know that they occupied the Indus Valley civilization. And then accordingly, the civilization grew. Language played a very important role. Various dynasties they came, various rules, etc. All of that was flourishing slowly and gradually, right? So when this was going on, the earlier speakers, they might have dealt in with that aspect. So I want to talk about one thing during the pre-British era. Ki I have, now this is a kind of a confession from my side, that to many of the students of this college I have taught legal history. And my very first statement when I talk about legal history is that the legal history of India, it begins with the advent of Britishers. It begins with the year 1600. Now whatever I am going to say, it was different in the class, and what I'll be talking today will be different. So there were many bright students in my class when I used to teach legal history. So they used to be very adamant and they used to say कि ma'am, why do we need to study legal history of the Britishers? उससे पहले कुछ नहीं था क्या? Okay, so I owe an apology. The way Shashi Tharoor said कि Great Britain owes an apology to all its former colonies. Even I have my unending list of apologies. So to begin with, the first one is English as the medium that is chosen to address this session. So we all know कि how much fuss we have created about English, right? Many of us feel very inferior if you are not able to speak in English. So let me tell you that it is only 10% of the world's population that speaks English. Okay, so there is nothing to be ashamed of if you're not able to speak English, because that is not the benchmark, that is not the criteria. But then, as we all know, कि today we have to choose English as a language. Why? Because we are a mixed population in this college. So there are many who do not understand Marathi. I am not fluent in Hindi. I won't be able to speak in Hindi nicely. And that is why English is chosen as the medium, right? So why 1600? Because we justify it in the class that the Britishers came down to India in the form of merchants in the year 1600, right? Prior to that, what was there? So let me tell you, or we all know rather, we have studied this in schools, कि we had the Mughal attacks frequently. So when this Mughal attacks happened, there was one administrator who is very well distinguished for what kind of administration he had. So I'm referring to none other than the great emperor, Emperor Akbar. So you might ask me कि why I have chosen Akbar or why उसके बाद I'm going to talk about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, the administration that he had. So why have I chosen these two samples? Because number one, we were always attacked by the Muslim. There was always a Muslim invasion. Okay. And second thing is, naturally the state to which you belong, you have an affinity towards it. So that is why one, I've chosen Maharashtra as a unit. Second, looking into the entire Mughal Islamic attack, I've chosen Akbar as the one. Because the other emperors were there, but they were busy in other things. The one who gave us a good administration is the Emperor Akbar. Okay. So during this era, what we find is that there was a system of 9 gems which was there. Okay. So during the Akbar Empire, we had those 9 gems. Now, if you look carefully at all those 9 gems, you will find that there was a kind of good central administration, as well as there was also a good kind of provincial administration. Okay. So the area was divided nicely. You had subas, parganas, small units were there, many other division was there. So we always feel when we study land laws, for that matter, when you study who has played a greater role in deciding the boundaries and the other geographical limits, we always pinpoint towards the Britishers. Britishers have laid down that foundation. However, it is not true. Even prior to that, we had a good set of administration. And the same is true even about the Maratha kingdom or the Maratha empire, where we had the Asht.Pradhan Mandal system. So there also you will find we had good administrators, the revenue was properly looked after, then the taxation was also done nicely, zamindars were there, they had all their work that was allotted to them by the king, right? So it is not true that we did not have the fully established administration as such. So then why do we always look at the Britishers as a precedent or as an example? So I want to again admit the reason behind this is look at your curriculum. Look at your syllabus, the way it is drafted right from your school days, where deliberately you are taught a lot about the Western culture, and deliberately you are not taught about your own indigenous values. Okay. So the fault is that of the university. So then we get a question, then when will the university change its syllabi? Right. So there are many subjects that we have to study which are absolutely of no use or of no relevance and which miss Indian values. So I'll be coming to that later under the education system, what is wrong and what is right, etc. Right? So we had good administration. Then why do we call legal history begins with the year 1600? The reason for this is that the Britishers, they came down to India and they started establishing certain courts, or they started creating certain administration via their charters. And the modern Indian legal system, if you try to trace its roots, you'll find that it comes from the era 1600 onwards. So to give you an example, today if you try to find out the origin of Supreme Court, you will have to come down to the British era, where you come to the Regulating Act of 1773, that was a colonial legislation, and in that there was a provision for establishment of Supreme Court at Calcutta. So why do we teach you that it begins with the advent of Britishers? Because modern day institutions, they can be traced back to the to the times where the Britishers had come. Okay. Now, Britishers, when they decided that from traders, from merchants, they have to become rulers now. So that was all planned. Okay, it was all an ideological base. Right? Britishers had decided that we have to become, we have to control this particular region. So they had their group of intellectuals who did a lot of study. And one thing that is called as, there is a theory behind this. Every one of us must read this theory. To be precise, the name of the theory is Oriental Despotism. Okay, I repeat it again, that this theory, which tells us why, how and kaise the Britishers planned to rule us, you'll find it in that theory, which is known as the Oriental Despotism. Okay. Now, I'll explain this theory briefly to you, and that will give you the answer ki aaj पण आपण Indians असे का आहोत. You'll find we lack motivation. We are not ready to come out of our comfort zone. Right? These are the characteristic features which you will find. I don't say everyone is like that. But they have imbibed this in us through a very careful study, which is called as Oriental Despotism. Okay. So let us see what the theory is. Then I'll tell you how it is related to the scenario where past we are referring to. So the Britishers had an idea that we are superior and we are civilized. Okay, there was nothing wrong about feeling yourself as superior or civilized. Everyone would feel that. So Britishers had this idea that we belong to a country where we have all gentlemen, we are superior and we are so-called civilized. Okay. Now their idea was that if England is superior, then there is someone who is not superior. Okay. So when I am superior, naturally my criteria would be that the person who is next to me or in front of me is inferior. They had this notion of civilized and uncivilized. So when they looked at the Indian behavior, they thought that they are so uncivilized. One common example, they use knives and forks to eat their food. We eat our foods with our own hands. So for them, the idea of civilized, I'm just giving you one example. The idea of civilized was not eating food with hands. And the idea of being uncivilized is that you're using your hands to eat the food. Second thing is, they had also one criteria of being Christian and not being Christian. So one criteria is superior, inferior. Second criteria is civilized and uncivilized. Third criteria is countries that are Christian and countries that are not Christians. Okay. So one thing also they had noticed that Oriental despotism in India means that the laws are not codified in India. Another meaning, like this doctrine has many meanings. So one I told you, feeling superior, inferior, feeling civilized, uncivilized, and then feeling that one is Christian and the other is not Christian. The second parameter that they had is that they carefully studied the Indian situation. That India was always liable to be attacked by someone. And they are subservient to this. Okay, so someone attacks, they are subservient to it. Why? Because we have developed this idea of leading an easy life. Okay, so we like to be at ease. So one thing that was noticed about the Indian people is ki, one, they are of submissive nature, they are subservient. Second is, if they are attacked, they automatically be passive to this, and because they don't want any kind of further problem, they submit to the attack. The second thing that they realized is ki, if you look at Muslim invasion was, on the other hand, ki it was dominated by religion, and that too by sword in their hand. Okay, so the second feature that was noticed is ki one is comfortable. If you attack me, I'll submit myself, I'll surrender, because I'm peace loving, because I don't want any efforts, I want an easy life. That was one thing. Second that was noticed about the Islamic rule is ki they love their religion a lot, and they believed in this expansion policy where sword was the only tool through which they are going to have this kind of attacks and expansion. So then Britishers carefully studied the Indian situations ki they have always submitted to the attacks. There are hardly very few rulers, local rajas, who have protested against this, right? Second thing that again they noticed is ki if we give them freedom, if we give them independence, they will not be able to tolerate this. Okay, to Indian, if we give you a kind of freedom, independence, the values of liberty, if we give them, the Indians will not feel comfortable in it, because they are always subject to be ruled by someone. Okay, so atta पण तुम्ही बघा की if something is made voluntary, you don't do it, we don't do it. जर सांगितलं की ऑप्शनल आहे करा तर आपण नाही करत. पण if it is something that is made mandatory ki you have to do it, then automatically you will do it. If a deadline is given to you ki उद्याच करायचंय, so then you understand the gravity of the offense. So Indian people had this kind of nature. The Britishers had studied that carefully, and accordingly they drafted policies. Now one thing that they had in mind is ki we want to codify laws for India. Okay, so I'll talk about this part now. I have taught in the chapter of legal history that the Charter of 1833 is very important, because through this the process of codification began. So section 53 of the Charter of 1833, it said that we have to codify laws for India, and for that what we need to have is, we need to have a law commission. So via this particular act, first law commission was established, and T.B. Macaulay, he was the chairman of this first law commission. Accordingly, 4 law commissions were there. But do we ask a question ki at that juncture, did we actually need codified laws? Okay, we were all based on customs, we were giving great values to our norms of the society. खरंच आपल्याला codification ची गरज होती का? Okay, now there is a school, a historical school of jurisprudence which believes that if you codify laws, it kills the natural growth of a country. Okay, so every country has a natural growth. तुम्हाला जर त्याची growth curb करायची असेल, तो you introduce codification. Because otherwise, as an organism, the state or that nation might grow. But if you give codification, codification is not an answer. Today also we know that we have so many codes, we have so many legislations. So is there an assurance that you have so many laws, are they effective? The answer is no. So let it evolve. So one thing was that we did not require codification at that juncture. Maybe slowly, gradually we could have realized that codification is necessary. Accordingly we could have done. So natural growth of India was stopped by the British. Right? Secondly, we have heard about Lord Cornwallis, we have heard about Lord Bentinck, we have heard about Lord Curzon, and we have heard about so many governor generals coming to India. आता हे जे governor generals होते, those who were coming to India, they were somewhere in Bengal, Bihar, Orissa, Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, presidency towns मध्ये. they started making laws for us, rules, regulations for us. So, though while teaching you I said Warren Hastings was an able administrator, Cornwallis had given a good criminal reforms policy to us, if you look at their historical antecedents, they were not knowing the local language, they were not knowing about what type of laws India needs. If at all they wanted to know law, they used to refer or they used to take help of the Muslim law officers like Qazis, Muftis, Maulvis, Hutes, or in case of Hindus there were Pandits were there, or there were other people also who were learnt in law, or law and other customs, etc. So they used to take their help, and then you cannot confidently say that particular local officers were able to express the problem nicely, because language was always a barrier. One such Governor General, now I forgot his name, he was sent to India on remand. Okay, so he had done some offense there and he was sent here on remand. And yes, sir? Okay, so then how do you expect that person to make good laws for India? Ek to he doesn't have knowledge of English law also properly, he doesn't have knowledge of the local laws, and so many other things are there. So this was all a farce. They wanted to cut the growth, natural growth of India, so all that was a farce. Still there are many people who would still advocate that Britishers were really good for us, and they will give you their list of reasons. So one, they will tell you that railways which were established by the Britishers, so that is one thing की British नसते तर आपल्याकडे आत्ता railways असत्या की नाही माहित नाही. Okay. So we all know कि they initially came as traders, and for the facilitation of goods from India to England and to other places, they required means of communication. So no doubt water was the only way or channel through which the transportation was happening, right? So they wanted other faster means of communication as well. So that is why they created such railways for their benefit. Okay? Secondly, they started trading in indigo, jute, cotton, and India, like you might have heard, India was a golden land. It was plundered, looted by the British, and that is how their treasures were filled. So no amount of justification howsoever anyone gives you that the British were good for us, they were not good for us at all. And then the recent tweet or the recent communication that has happened, see what has happened to Pakistan or see what has happened to India, right? And they say कि colonization asta tar India would have been in a better position. So no one would agree to this, or we should not agree to this. We know the amount or the number of scientists that we have produced. We also know कि how capable people we have, right? So we know our contribution. Even the Mars mission, it was successful in India. So we all are able, as sir rightly pointed out, we all have potential, but we miss on it because we are always feeling good in our own comfort zone. So that is something which is to be worked upon. It is not something which you should take it lightly. You have to work upon your own potentials, be it any language, right? Now that is what I talked about past. Now I come to the second aspect, that Chief Justice, the then Chief Justice of India, Ramanna, he talked about that Indianization is required. So let me tell you कि Indianization ची एक definition नहीं है. If I ask you कि what is your idea of Indianization, I'm sure every one of us would have a different answer. So Indianization in pre-British era is different. Indianization in British era is different. And post-independence also the idea of Indianization is different. So if you read carefully what Chief Justice Ramanna, Chief Justice of India Ramanna talked about, he was talking about a specific meaning of Indianization, which I'll explain you in 1 minute. Let me tell you the three meanings, the possible meanings. Meanings could be diverse, but there are three possible meanings. So one possible meaning is democratization and making the legal system free or open and accessible. That is one meaning. Second meaning is to have a hard nation, a hard state, where there would be less scope for discussions and deliberations. I'm going to explain all the three. And then you have the third meaning of Indianization, which means ki a collection or a conflagration of religious and cultural values. To some, Indianization might mean saffronization, right? So it is all different for every person. My notion of Indianization would be different from your notion. So now let me talk about ki what was Chief Justice of India intending when he said ki we need to think about Indianization. So when you read his speech, like this was an address that he was giving, some other member was retiring and there he was delivering this address. And then he said ki look at the Indian practices, they are all colonial in nature. Okay, and then he further said ki we are in need of Indianization. So he was talking about the democratic processes, he was talking about access to justice, transparency, he was talking about how to put an end to the adversarial mechanism that we follow. Right? We all are automatically absorbing the British legal practices. So one such notion which you see in the court is the adversarial mechanism. Sagla slow chalta. So we have heard one thing about judiciary, ki if a son files a case in the court of law, then maybe his great-great-grandson might be in a position to utilize the fruits of that litigation. So that one liner is enough to tell you the adversarial mechanism. We have a slow process to deal with. Second thing is ki look at the language that is used in the court of law. So recently or this semester I am teaching moot courts as a subject to them. So there are many students who have this inhibition ki amala English madhe nahi bolta hai. So I always tell them ki that is not the problem, because you should be able to express yourself in any language whatsoever you have. But then the university says ki na English has to be a medium. Or recently you might have heard ki loko म्हणतात ki Marathi मध्ये paper लिहू शकतो का आम्ही, and then you say no, right? So small things have to be there, and once we start with that, then things will be open. So coming back to him, Chief Justice of India, Ramanna, he said ki look at the language of the court. A poor litigant who is coming from the rural areas, he doesn't understand what is going on in the court of law. कुणाची केस चालू आहे कोर्टामध्ये, त्याची स्वतःची केस चालू आहे, त्याला समजतंय का काय ॲफिडेविट, काय प्लेंटिफ, डिफेंडंट, whatever. He doesn't understand. So he is the one or she is the one who feels out of place in his own case or in his own litigation. So when Chief Justice of India was talking about Indianization, he was talking about this adversarial procedure. Okay. So याचा अर्थ Indianizationचा एक अर्थ असा आहे की it means democratization. It means focus on the language, the style, the procedure. Also one more example is given ki there is a lot of delay and there is a huge pendency of case laws in the court. So there is a research which says ki कुणामुळे delay होतो. So a small example is given ki look at the powers of the police. Merely on the ground of suspicion, a police officer can arrest someone. So when you can arrest someone on a suspicious ground, naturally you have to comply with Article 22 of the Indian Constitution. Produce that person before the nearest magistrate within 24 hours. So who is causing a burden on the judiciary? Your own laws. So it's high time that you change. If you look at the British laws, there are 5 laws which the Britishers, they enacted for us, but they have done away with those laws way back. Right? So 5 such laws are ki today unnatural offences, that is sodomy, that is not an offence in England. Adultery though was never an offence in England. It was just ki you could ask for a compensation. It was a civil wrong. Blasphemy is still not a now it is not an offense. We still have retained it under section 295 of the Indian Penal Code. त्यांनी unlawful assembly पण काढून टाकलाय. We still have 141 section of IPC that talks about unlawful assembly. आणि मग पॅन्डेमिक मध्ये तुम्ही बघितलंय की नॉट ओनली ड्युरिंग डिस्टर्ब टाइम्स, पीस टाइम्स मध्ये ऑल्सो तुम्ही कलम 141 लागू करू शकता. So if they have done away with the laws, why do we need to carry the burden of archaic laws? So Law Commission prepared a report and they said that there are as many as 100 legislations in India which are colonial and you need to get rid of those. So if you look at the manifesto that was given by BJP in the year 2014, the manifesto says that if you elect us, we will do away with those laws which are redundant in nature, right? So there is a dire need that you abolish those laws. But now there is another angle to this also. No doubt archaic laws are not necessary. Pandemic happened, what did we do? We revived the Epidemic Act. We had to. So we have a bunch of both sides said. To a same story, we have both sides. So you have to bring and create your own laws very strong. कि काही झालं तरी we will come up with at least a rule, a regulation, and we will not rely on the archaic laws. So that change of attitude and mentality is necessary. So that is the meaning of Indianization, right? And then if you talk about the second meaning of Indianization, कि do you intend to create a hardcore state or a hardcore nation? Now, hardcore state, let me tell you what it is. Hardcore state is where you have a state that makes discussions and deliberations very difficult. The decisions will be taken by the government, the restrictions will be taken or imposed by the government, so on and so forth. So we are also aware of this part, ki where a nation becomes a hard state. It can curtail your fundamental rights, right? Internet services were suspended. Surveillance was placed which violated your right to life. So हे पण होऊ शकतं if you give meaning to Indianization as having a hardcore state. Third example or the third type of Indianization is where you have a collection of religious and cultural values. Now religion, as we all know in India, it is such a delicate issue. We still are not, I don't support codification at all. But I'm just giving you one example ki UCC is still not possible, right? So religion and then culture based, if you want to form a group and you have to think Indianization on that terms, then again it will be like bringing the nation back 50 years. So any meaning is dangerous. The one that Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramanna, talked about looks sensible. You have to democratize the entire process, right? Also, I'll tell you 2-3 more things about Indianization. We all are aware about MC Mehta versus Union of India. Now, खूप सारे cases आहेत MC Mehta versus Union of India, but in the year 1986, something which was relating to Shriram fertilizers. In that case, the then Chief Justice of India, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, he said while dealing with a case, now the case is relating to environment, so naturally we were talking about the polluter pays principle and other things. So he said in that judgment, the lines are quoted, that we should not adhere to the colonial laws, we need to create our own Indian jurisprudence. So it is the need of the hour, right? However, ancient text मध्ये काय काय घ्यायचं, जसं मी म्हटलं की it would be very dangerous if it is religion and cultural based. So you need to set up a group of experts, you need to set up a commission, and they will tell you about secular values. Jasa now, honestly, I have not read Smruti and all, but I understand one thing ki प्रत्येक religion मध्ये एक universal value असते, आणि which does not have the flavor of religion. की खोटं नका बोलू किंवा don't indulge in violence, असे काही काही rules असतात. तर that committee and that commission can take up that and they can segregate ki these are the ancient texts which are good for us. Like Justice Nazir, he did say ki we have Gita, we have Bible, we have Upanishads, and they are all giants of law. So their help can be taken. So wherever they are secular in nature, you can take their help. The court has given decision in Joseph Shine's case and also has given a different verdict in case of, I'll tell about Joseph Shine, till then the other case I will automatically recall. So in Joseph Shine, it was a case about section 497 of IPC, that is adultery as an offense. Attas mi म्हटलं की England मध्ये it was not an offense for a very longer period of time, right? So in that case, where there was a question about, or a text was referred about Manusmruti. And Manusmruti, it did say that those people who love to enjoy and take pleasure from the wives of other people, they must be punished. So when we have declared section 497 as unconstitutional, naturally we have gone against that particular Manusmruti, which was dangerous for, right? So that is how you have to seek a balance. Okay, what is in favor, take it. What is secular, take it. What is not secular, avoid it. And the second case, it was about your Sabrimala's case, where menstruation was referred to. Okay, during menstruation, the woman becomes she pollutes the environment, or it is not good that she touches a particular item, ye wo. So then whatever is, just a change in time ahe, go with the changed interpretation. So that is how we can incorporate our religious text into it. I don't say ki all 100% text changla asel. Whatever is correct, whatever is to your societal norms and standards, you can definitely adopt that. Okay. So then what is the way ahead? Future, that is way ahead. So future or way ahead is ki you first of all inculcate in yourself that I want to love my nation. Today now we know most of the things ki we are very prone to Western influences. Even Raste sir would agree with this. So we seriously condemn our own culture. आपल्याला लाज वाटते to say ki we belong to India. Right? You fall for the Western culture more. आणि ती त्यांची पॉलिसीच असते की if you attract the youth of a particular country, naturally the nation is not going to grow. So if you are going to become fans of Korean bands and you are going to, this is my personal example, my daughters are huge fan of that BTS band, a Korean band. So they keep on continuously ridiculing the Indian culture, which I don't like. So this should not happen. So you have to begin with it. Once you begin with it, it will be planted at all levels. Right? So the change must happen from ourselves. That is what I have to say. Now, the concluding point, ki khub vast hai. It's not possible to touch each and every aspect of it. And I just tried to give you a glimpse. I just tried to ignite your young minds. You think on these lines. And then surely Indianization will happen.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We move on to the question and answer round. Nakul, can we have the chits that we have collected? Not clearly defined. Isn't it vague that it could lead to arbitrariness if done without proper meaning given to it?
Yes, absolutely true. That is why I explained. So the question is very correct. The answer to this is yes. And why? Because one meaning of Indianization is creating a hardcore state. So hardcore state manje ki the state will take arbitrary actions. So yes, manje definition जर एखादी नसेल तर हा problem नक्कीच होतो.
The next one is, how would India adopt to reciprocity of laws without foreign countries, considering the huge ethico-legal gap which is there? So if it is done as per Indian scriptures and law and not take into account the influence of foreign culture in countries.
Foreign culture or foreign legislations, they can always be cited as an example. But then you have to modify it, you have to tailor it as per your own needs. तो problem नहीं है, foreign legislation नक्की बघा. त्याच्यात लँग्वेज चांगली असते, त्याच्यामध्ये लूपहोल्स पण बरेचदा कमी असतात, बट देन यू हॅव टू ॲडजस्ट इट टू युअर नीड्स. असं करायला काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही आहे.
Considering the diversity that is present in India, in choosing the right version of Indianization from texts and past antecedents, how do we deal with the plurality in them?
So about plurality, we know that we are a federal form of government where we have central legislations and we have provincial legislations. So according to provinces also, that is states, we have our own state legislations. So then that can also be worked upon. We can retain your diversity and still we can be one. So त्याच्यात पण काही हरकत नाही आहे, as long as you have good scholarly people like you to draft a legislation.
And the last one is, apart from the change in the education system, what other ways and means could be there to step towards Indianization of law?
So education is definitely one such medium through which you can bring change, and then the other things that I said की तुम्ही तुमच्यापासूनच चालू करा. So I think that also I have covered की स्वतःपासून चालू करा. You automatically connect to your nation, right? Don't feel isolated or don't fall for the Western culture. That is how it will be fine.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And there are quite a few more questions. However, you can approach ma'am personally and I guess she'll give you more elaborative answers full of examples. Excellence is a continuous process and not an accident. It is the result of high intention, intelligent direction, sincere efforts, skillful execution, and the vision to see obstacles as opportunities. That is what was rightly done by the Center of Legal Excellence of Deccan Education Society and the vision of Dr. Anagha Baldota ma'am. So what and which other person to deliver the vote of thanks for the conclusion of the second edition of the lecture series? I invite upon Dr. Anagha Baldota ma'am to deliver the vote of thanks for today's program.
So the journey starts from self-realization and it ends at self-realization is the moral of the story of the entire lecture series. I suppose that is the story, that is the message you have taken. A very good afternoon to the dignitaries on and off the dais and my dear audience. Since past 3 days we all are enjoying a roller coaster ride of edutainment on Indianization of law under the prestigious banner of Swatantryaveer Savarkar Smruti Abhinav Bharat Vyaspeeth, a 4-day lecture series. The vast scope to the main theme and the infinite limitations in execution of this lecture series were indeed grave challenges a few weeks back. However, ranging from Chanakya's diplomacy, ancient scriptures, Vedas, Upanishads, Mahabharat, and all our knowledgeable resource persons enlightened us on Indianization of law, and today our beloved Sonali ma'am has opened a broad spectrum of past, present and future of the theme. DS Center for Legal Excellence ventures many interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary endeavors, and Swatantryaveer Savarkar Vyaspeeth is one of its kind. Exploring the theme from different point of views, considering various approaches, perspectives, provided us different lenses to read and interpret law. And then we realized it's not only about Indianization of law. Actually, it is more about the travel from being Indian to being Bharatiya. Of course, Vyaspeeth is not an overnight success. It was all about team efforts, and this is my tiny attempt to acknowledge and appreciate all those helping hands who has contributed to this grand success. Because I believe gratitude is the only attitude which helps us to grow, expand qualitatively. And that's why I take this opportunity to thank everyone who contributed to this grand event. To begin with, I would love to thank today's guest of honor, Advocate Bhagwan Rao Salunkhe sir, who spared his valuable time and grace the occasion. I further extend my heartfelt gratitude to our very own beloved and widely respected faculty member, Assistant Professor Sonali Renuse ma'am, for her insightful, well-researched discourse. Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed our pleasure to receive you as always. Our visionary chairman, Dr. Sharat Kunte sir, has always been a strong pillar of motivating guidance. We are grateful for his unconditional support in all our endeavors. I would also extend my sincere gratitude towards Advocate Ashok Palande sir, Chairman of College Development Committee, for being the backbone of this event. Thank you, sir. Our principal madam has always been tirelessly multitasking throughout her tenure, and yet she managed to assist in all her possible ways. Thank you, ma'am, for your patience and support. Further, I extend my thankfulness to all my faculty members, dear faculty members, non-teaching, library members of DES SNFLC family. I further thank the assistants for video shooting, Joshi Mama, all other sub-staff. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now it's the turn of my dear most enthusiastic, young, dynamic volunteers. Urja, Tanmay, Ronak, Nakul, Siddhi, Ajinkya, Pushkar, Shamika, Anushka, Ishita, Akshat, Nupur, Vasudha. This list is unending. I know that. Forgive me if I miss any name, but yes, guys, kudos to your efforts, enthusiasm. We are blessed to have your wholehearted support. Thank you so very much. Last but not the least, my sincere gratitude towards you all. Thank you for being such an amazing audience. Let's join our hands together to carry forward the great legacy of Swatantryaveer Savarkar, because we are going to be the grand ambassadors of DES Shri.Navalmal Firodia Law College. I wish you all the best for that. Thank you, everyone. Here, with the permission of DIAS, I declare Vyaspeeth series to be concluded, and I request the DIAS to remain back for the photograph. I also request my faculty members to come ahead for the group photograph. Thank you, audience.